On the 2nd of August, one of the most important arms control treaties, the INF Treaty, has formally expired. Viewers may note that the summit between U.S. and Russia on the 30th of January 2019 failed to find a way to keep the treaty. The United States suspended its compliance with the INF Treaty on the 2nd of February 2019, blaming Russia for non-compliance. In addition, the U.S. stated that there was a 6-month timeline for full withdrawal, and it will expire if Russia did not come back into compliance within that. The situation didn't improve, and the timeline expired on the 2nd of August. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes why the U.S. has decided to develop new weapons after the expiry of the INF Treaty. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by War Thunder. If you are, like us, fascinated by military vehicles and technology, I recommend you give War Thunder a try. It's a military vehicle combat game which you can download and play for free on PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One with cross-platform support. It has a huge variety of more than 1,200 playable aircraft, tanks, helicopters, and ships from the 1930s to the 1990s, which you can take to battle on land, in the air, and at sea on more than 80 theaters of war. War Thunder's been kind enough to offer all Defense Updates viewers a special bonus, which will grant you a free premium tank or aircraft and 3 days of premium account time for registering using our link in the description below. So take the plunge and join more than 20 million players from around the world. INF Treaty was signed by Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev in 1987. It banned ground launch missiles with ranges from 500 kilometers to 5,500 kilometers. That's 310 to 3,420 miles. The INF Treaty eliminated around 2,700 nuclear and conventional missiles, as well as their launchers. This was achieved by May 1991. This included short-range missile with 310 to 620 miles, that's 500 to 1,000 kilometer range, and intermediate-range missile with 620 to 3,420 miles, that's 1,000 to 5,500 kilometer range. The treaty had provisions for 10 years of on-site inspections. INF Treaty went a long way in ending the serious standoff between U.S. Pershing and cruise missiles and Soviet SS-20 missiles in Europe. It should be noted that the treaty does not cover sea-launched missiles. On November 29, 2017, speaking at the Wilson Center, National Security Council official Christopher Ford had revealed that the weapon violating the INF Treaty was the NOVATOR 9M729, having NATO designation SSC-8. This newly developed missile is reported to be derived from 3M14 caliber NK land-based cruise missile, and probably uses some design elements of KH-101 air-launched cruise missile. There's limited information on the missile, but it's expected to use transport erector launcher. The missile is thought to be guided by inertial navigation system. As per the United States, NOVATOR 9M729 is land-based and has a range between 500 kilometers to 5,500 kilometers. That's 310 to 3,420 miles, depending on fuel load and warhead use. This makes the missile violate the terms of the INF Treaty. The 9M729 is capable of hitting targets throughout Western Europe with tactical nuclear warheads in the event of a conflict. In December 2017, the U.S. government had sanctioned several companies involved in the production of 9M729, including lead contractor NOVATOR. In February 2018, the Pentagon concluded that Russia was actively violating the terms of the agreements. In October last year, President Trump claimed the agreement did little more than interfere with U.S. military development. The president had said at a Nevada rally, "I don't know why President Barack Obama didn't negotiate or pull out. We're not going to let them violate a nuclear agreement and go out and do weapons, and we're not allowed to." NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg concurred with Trump's assessment. He stated, After years of denials, Russia recently acknowledged the existence of a new missile system called 9M729. Russia has not provided any credible answers on this new missile. All allies agree that the most plausible assessment would be that Russia is in violation of the treaty. The INF Treaty already had much opposition in America's power circle. This is not only because of the Russian aspect, but also due to the Chinese factor. Harry Harris, the former commander of U.S. Pacific Command, who's now U.S. ambassador to South Korea, is one of them. In testimony submitted to Congress last year, Harris pointed to several important aspects. He noted that China is not a signatory of any treaty like this, and used it to develop a large arsenal of missiles. As per him, the Chinese rocket forces have more than 2,000 ballistic and cruise missiles, almost 95% of which would violate the INF Treaty if China was a signatory. Both parties have indicated that they'll now pursue weapons that were restricted as per the INF Treaty. Russian Defense Secretary Sergei Shoigu recently stated that Russia will build ground-based, intermediate-range nuclear missiles within the next 2 years. He said that land-based version of the Navy's Caliber cruise missile and a new land-based hypersonic missile must be built in 2019 or 2020. Shoigu said that such mid-range missiles must now be designed, insisting that Russia take tit-for-tat measures. He also accused the U.S. of seeking to make ground-based missiles with a range capability of over 500 kilometers. America is also moving in that direction and seems to have two weapons in mind. Currently, U.S. Army has MGM-140 Army Tactical Missile Systems, ATACMS. U.S. Army Tactical Missile System is a surface-to-surface missile manufactured by the American company Lockheed Martin. It has a range of over 100 miles, 160 kilometers, with solid propellant. America is already working towards a system that will have a range of 499 kilometers, just below the 500-kilometer range restricted of the INF Treaty. The program is designated as Precision Strike Missile, or PRSM, and is an upgrade of ATACMS. Viewers may note that the U.S. Army is pushing towards a replacement for the Army Tactical Missile System with PRSM by 2023, which is much earlier than the initial timeline of 2027. The Trump administration is also looking to field a new nuclear weapon designed to counter Russia. It's the W-76-2 warhead, which is expected to be available for deployment by late 2019. The W-76-2 is an adaptation of the older W-76-1. W-76-1 is present in Trident D5 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, which are carried by the U.S. Navy's Ohio-class submarines. The W-76-2 is designed to have a much smaller explosive power of around 5 to 7 kilotons of TNT when compared to other warheads. To give viewers a perspective, the Hiroshima bomb had a yield of 15 to 17 kilotons. The U.S. will field an unknown number of the new warhead, and these are expected to have a much lower threshold for usage. The U.S. government's 2018 Nuclear Posture Review, NPR, pointed to the fact that Russia is lowering its threshold for using low-yield nuclear weapons in wartime, and warned that the U.S. must move to match this capability. The NPR stated, Russia's belief that limited nuclear first use, potentially including low-yield weapons, can provide such an advantage is based in part on Moscow's perception that its greater number and variety of non-strategic nuclear systems provide a coercive advantage in crises and at lower levels of conflict. This is where the new American weapons will be useful. In that situation, just like Russia will have a way to strike Europe, the U.S. will have a way to strike Russia from Europe. This will mean both sides will be back on the same situation which had led to the INF Treaty in the first place. And it will actually be worse, as they'll have nukes that have lower usage threshold. Since the distance between Russia and Western Europe is very small, both parties will have very little time to react in case a missile launch is triggered. This is bound to complicate the security situation. President Trump recently stated that his administration had been discussing with Russia about a pact for nuclear weapons, so that they get rid of some, we get rid of some. He also added, we'd certainly have to include China at some point. It remains to be seen if a new treaty comes into place.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.